What's good, YouTube? April has snuck up on us, and with a new month brings another Edison Format tier list. Today we're going to be looking at staples. Now, if you play the game, you're probably familiar with this term. It just refers to cards that are sort of generically good, can be splashed in pretty much any deck if you've got like some flex spots. It doesn't really have a consensus definition. I mainly just compiled this short list from charts of the most played cards at tournaments. I picked out ones that I figured were staples. I added a few extra ones in. It's not like a completely comprehensive, accurate list. There might be some cards here you say aren't staples. There might be some cards that aren't here that you think are staples. But we're just going to be going over these ones that I picked out. And we've got 5 tiers here. So I'm going to go through and real quick explain the 5 tiers before we get into the ranking as per usual. Well, this tier, Toxic, can't really be explained without just saying that it's for these two. Alright, Trap Dust Shoot and Brain Control are single-handedly responsible for stealing an absurd number of games in Edison Format just by themselves. They're that degenerate, they're that overpowered, they're that stupid that they can just like win the game for no reason. So I felt like they were OP enough that I should just give them their own tier above everything else. So that's what the Toxic tier exists for. Auto-include, obviously, this shouldn't be taken literally, but this is referring to the staples that I think are so good you should play it in pretty much anything. Obviously not literally anything, because, I don't know, if you're playing, like, Exodia FTK, you don't really need to play Heavy Storm or, what, you know, just an example, but these are cards that I feel like should be are good enough you should play it in anything. Good. Good just means good. I don't know how else to phrase it. Side deck, that's cards that I would more frequently put in the side than the main. And then bad are cards that I just like wouldn't even side probably. So yeah, that's where I'm at on that. So let's just start ranking the non-Dust Shoot Brain Control cards on this list. Beginning with Solemn Judgment. This one's gonna go in auto include. I feel like this list of staples is gonna be heavily slanted towards the better tiers, just because the fact that they're good is kind of what makes them staples in the first place. And Judgment's just crazy. This card is like, yeah, it's definitely an auto-include. I mean, just the ability to stop anything is so nuts. Obviously, frogs and stuff don't play this, but I think it's, like, good enough to... It might be, like, the bottom of this tier, because I feel like there's some decks that don't play it. So maybe like, the bottom of this tier, but I do think it's good enough to be put in auto-include, because pay half, stop anything is just ridiculous. And you've always got half, so you can always stop anything. And this card just, like, wins games a lot by itself, too. Like, I've randomly lost a lot because of Solemn, and that's annoying. So I think it's good enough to go in auto-include. MST, I'm putting this one in auto-include, too. I don't understand why people don't main this card in everything. There's some people who just, like, play a deck and don't main MST. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Why? Like, card's pretty good. Card's pretty, like, being able to interact with your opponent's back row kind of matters a lot. I mean, if you look at a lot of these other staples on the list, a lot of them are back row, and just being able to snipe one, pretty good. The chain ability, crazy, and there's just not a lot of like extenders in Edison Format. There's a lot of decks that like just can't extend into back row. So if you get disrupted, you're just like your turn is over at that point. And there's so many decks that live and die by their normal summon. So just having Space Typhoon to pick off Bottomless or Solemn or Torrential or whatever, or Book of Moon, it's very good. So I think Space Typhoon needs to go in auto-include. It's probably not as high as some of the other things. I think even above Judgment, though, I'll put it. I think MST is that good. Heavy Storm. This is probably the top of auto-include. Unless you're playing something completely non-interactive and completely degenerate, I feel like you just gotta play Heavy Storm no matter what. Even if you're playing a deck that plays like 20 back row, I still think you should play Heavy Storm. I think it's that good. I think you just need that threat of being able to board wipe. And yeah, it's like probably one of the craziest power cards in the entire format in terms of just being able to like, net advantage by itself. And the fear of Heavy is very format warping. So I'm going to put it like top of auto-include. I think Heavy is that crazy. Mind Control is like a side deck tier card. You can main this, but you have to like have some pretty specific requirements, I think. Like you need to just play a ton of tuners or something, because there's a lot of situations where you just get mega punished for activating Mind Crush and it'll be terrible. But sometimes it's crazy, and it's sort of a sacky high variance card in that way. But you can side it in a lot of stuff because of like Hamster Raikou. It's a card that's like good to side against, you know, Bayou Turbo or Lightsworn or something, especially if you have other ways to convert that just maybe aren't consistent enough to main it. So I think side deck tier is a good place to put it. Torrential. This goes between Heavy and MST. This is the best trap of the format besides Dust Shoot by far. Nothing comes close to Torrential besides Dust Shoot. I mean, Dust Shoot's kind of weird because like it's crazy and will just steal games, but then sometimes it's completely dead. Torrential is just always crazy though. It's by far better than any other trap card. It is sort of proactive. It can stop your opponent like while they're doing their play. You don't have to wait around for them to attack. You can just on summon, flip Torrential, and board wipe them. It's like a Mirror Force, but you can just like do it way more. Like they don't have to play into it. It's like impossible to play around Torrential, pretty much. You just kind of have to eat it if it's there in a lot of decks in a lot of situations, or you have to play super scared. So Torrential, I think, is the definitive best like trap, probably, if we take into account the fact that Dust Shoot will sometimes suck. So I'm going to put Torrential way up here. Mirror Force. Mirror Force is going between Solemn and MST. It's like a lot worse than Torrential Tribute because your opponent pretty much just has to be bad to lose to Mirror Force. Whereas with Torrential, sometimes you just have to play into it because it's like way trickier to play around Torrential Tribute than Mirror Force. Because with Mirror Force, like the only way you're losing this card is if you just say, screw it, I'm not going to play around Mirror Force. So I feel like that's, but that being said, it's still a power staple. It can still clear multiple monsters. It's still a threat. So I think it definitely goes in the auto include tier. Bottomless Trap Hole. See, I don't know what's going in bad because I really hate this card, and even I don't think it can go in bad. I'm going to put in side deck. I think it's very good if your deck like fears Blackwings, I guess. So it's a good card for them, and it's a pretty popular deck, so it's good to have. I don't generally main Bottomless Trap Hole. I think that is just too bad in too many situations and too many matchups. It's easy to play around, so I think side deck's a good spot for it. If you're playing against like GB or Blackwing or maybe Dragon, like Trap Dragons, Disaster Dragons, it's pretty good against those decks. But I wouldn't generally main this card. I don't think it's good enough to main. Book of Moon. I think this is the first entry into good. I think in terms of like non-power staple back row, this is probably the best one just because of how generic it is. It is technically a neg 1, but it just has so many uses. The fact that it blanks brain control, which is of course up here in toxic tier, is extremely good as well. It can like interrupt plays. It's chainable. It's proactive, unlike the battle traps. So, and you can use it on your turn too to book something down if there's an annoying floodgate. So it just has so many uses. So I think good is a good spot for it. D-Prison. I'm gonna get some hate for this hot take, but I'm putting this one in bad. I would not even side this card. I hate battle traps so much, and Mirror Force is like the exception because that card is a power card and can clear multiple things. But D-Prison, you're only going 1-for-1 with D-Prison, and it's just like so slow and so I don't know how to describe it, but like, your opponent just has to like hit into it. It doesn't do anything during your opponent's main phase. They just have to hit into it for it to do anything. And it's like even the decks you want to bring this in for are like the aggro decks, right? Like GB or Hero Beat or Blackwing. And it's just bad versus them. It's just like all of them have a good answer for it. Like GBs will just, do their test tiger play and pop it in main 1 with Gyzaris, and Blackwings will just chain Icarus attack or deck dev, and Hero Beat will just chain Spark. So it's, what are you even bringing this in for? Like, you can bring it in against recruiter decks and hope they're dumb and just play into your D-Prison, but like they're just gonna not do that though. If the zombie player doesn't want their Pyramid Turtle getting D-Prison, they can just not attack with Pyramid Turtle, and and then they just wait for like Dark Armed or a Brionac play where they'll just go off and like out your board and kill you, and D-Prison doesn't interact with that at all. So like it doesn't stop the higher variance, more powerful combo decks. It doesn't stop the like slow Unga Bunga attack aggro decks. It doesn't stop anything. Like, why are you playing this card? I don't get it. It's like one of the most played cards too. But anyway, I'm putting it in bad. I would not even side this. I don't think I've ever sided this. I just don't like it. So anyway, like they can Kai as your D-Prison. Caius the back row is actually good against D prison. Good lord. Speaking of which, Caius, I put a few monsters in here. The monsters are probably the most controversial in terms of whether they're defined as staples or not, but I feel like the ones I picked are generic enough that we could kind of call them staples. I mean, Caius is one of the most played cards, and it's not just like there's some popular deck that plays Caius. People just sort of throw it in everything, so I feel like we can call it a staple. Now, obviously it can't go in auto-include, but I think it is a solid good, for sure. It's just like the best monster of the... Well, that's kind of debatable. It's like one of the best monsters of the format for sure. It's just such a clean out to so many situations and so many things. Like, if your opponent's setting monsters, it deals with that. If they got a big guy you need to get rid of, it deals with that. Like, there's so many board states where you're just like, wow, Caius just outs this by itself. And, I mean, it's true. And then there's, like, also in conjunction with brain control, it's even crazier. So I think Caius is a solid good. Raikou, I lean more towards, like, the bottom of good. I think that Raikou is definitely a worse card than Caius. It is played in a lot of stuff, but the inherent, like, slowness of it means it's like a lot worse going second too, which is something I don't like about it. That being said, Raikou is a very good card. I think bottom of good is about where he belongs, though. Gores, should we rank Gores and Trag together? I feel like they're about the same level for me. There are decks where I would play one and not the other. Maybe there are more decks where Gores is like a fine auto-include, but there's also a lot of decks where you just can't play Gores because of the restriction, so I don't know. I feel like we throw them together. Maybe above Raikou, but below Book of Moon? That's probably a fair spot for them. I don't know, it's tough to say. This is probably the hardest one so far. Cyber Dragon goes in side deck tier. There are like some decks that main this, so I kind of threw it in. It's probably like the weirdest card to be called a staple on here, because there aren't a whole lot of things that main deck it, but it is a card you can main deck in like a fair deal of stuff, and it's not bad, so I kind of just tacked it on. But definitely a pretty emblematic of a side deck card. And then finally we got Dust Tornado. This is another side deck card. Yeah, it's really bad versus like if you just run into frogs and you're playing like heavy plus MST plus multiple Dust Tornado. That just seems quite bad. Maybe if you're playing a deck and you're just only worried about losing to Oppression or like a bunch of Trap Card Disruption, it's okay. There are definitely some decks that can main this card, but predominantly I think it's a side deck card. So that about finishes up the tier list for today. I don't know. Some people are probably going to hate on the D-Prison thing. Something had to go in bad, though. I mean, these cards are too good. I guess that's just the lesson. Cards that are staples are actually good. That's how they become staples. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed today's tier list. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe. You know, share the video, become a member. Do all that stuff. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, YouTube.